Art is a powerful force in our world. Art can be used in attempts for basic communication. It can tell stories. It can try to bring out a certain aspect of the world or humanity or some other subject. It can also take us to fantastic worlds and show us the vast creativity that humanity has. In my recommendation for today, I'll be looking at a game that expands the power of art to being able to save a town that has been abandoned and fallen into darkness and disrepair. And that game is Concrete Genie. Concrete Genie was developed by Pixel Opus in 2019 for the PlayStation 4. It cost $29.99 on the PlayStation Store at the time of this video and is rated E10, which is everyone 10 and older. I played this on the PlayStation 5 for this video, so that's where all this footage will come from. Concrete Genie is an action-adventure game where you play as a boy named Ash. You meet Ash as he's drawing in his sketchbook in the abandoned town of Denska, where he used to live. Unfortunately for Ash, the town isn't fully abandoned, as a group of bullies also tend to hang around the area. It sounds like Ash and the bullies already have a history at the start of the game, but where our story begins is that the bullies find Ash, tear up his notebook, scattering the pages, and then force him into a cable car to the local lighthouse, which is rumored to be haunted. At the lighthouse, one of his paintings, who he winds up naming Luna, comes alive and shows him a magical paintbrush that allows what he paints to come to life. They don't become real exactly, but are kind of a moving painting. This includes the ability to create genies, fun little creatures that are based off of sketches in Ash's notebook. Luna wants Ash to remove the darkness from Denska, and he accepts, setting off to bring color and life back to Denska with his magic paintbrush. If I'm being honest here, the story is the weakest link in Concrete Genie. It's not bad, it's just pretty simple and straightforward. There just doesn't feel like there is a lot of world building going on here. There is some backstory about what happened to Denska, but it leaves a lot of unanswered questions. Has the darkness happened in other places? Why is Ash given the power to overcome that darkness? Where do Luna and the genies come from exactly? These aren't questions really answered or even asked by the game. Everything is also resolved kind of in this nice, neat little package, which just felt unsatisfactory kind of at the end of it all. Again, it's nothing horrible, it's just a game that feels like it exists in its own little bubble and it doesn't really connect to a wider world. Like, where did this darkness come from? Does the darkness happen in other places? If it doesn't, what's special about Denska? These kind of questions just aren't really in play here. It's just kind of a short, contained little narrative, and that's okay if, you know, you're okay with such a narrow kind of scope of a story. So let me talk about the gameplay of Concrete Genie. Most of the gameplay is non-combative, as in there really aren't enemies to fight in this game. Instead, you're looking to light up various lights around Denska by painting around them to help fight the darkness. You paint by finding pages of your sketchbook in order to paint those items. They can be things like stars, moon, trees, sun, plants, campfires, like all kinds of different landscapey kind of things. To paint, you wind up using the motion controls on your controller to point where you're going to paint. Sometimes, to paint in certain areas to light up the lights, you'll need the help of another creation that you could create with your paintbrush. And these are the titular genies that can help you bring light back to Denska. The genies can help in two different ways. The first is by fulfilling requests by the genies. Over the course of the game, you'll find various landscape objects to paint, and you'll often notice that your genies will be requesting a certain object or objects to be painted nearby. Fulfilling these requests gives you super paint. This super paint can allow you to remove patches of darkness that you can't paint on normally. This is also able to allow genies to traverse the walls and get to certain locations that you might need to do something and be able to help out in the second way that I'm going to talk about right now. The second way that the genies can help are by helping you past environmental puzzles that allow you to progress. There are three types of genies in the game: red that use fire, yellow that use electricity, and blue that use wind powers. It is usually pretty easy to tell what is part of an environmental puzzle, as they are usually a shiny red or blue for those color of genies, or an electrical box for the yellow genies. With these kind of mechanics, the game has a small open world feel to it. The areas aren't big, but they are interconnected, and you unlock more and more of Denska as you progress in the game. You start out at the fishing dock, then move on to the hydroelectric plant, and finally the waterways. And these are the main explorable places besides the lighthouse. Although the ending does take place in a separate location, I think it's under the lighthouse. There's caves underneath the lighthouse that you go to for the final level, but you can't return to that one. All of your collectibles and stuff like that are going to be in the four areas, like the lighthouse, the fishing dock, the hydroelectric plant, and the waterways. And even the lighthouse doesn't have nearly as much as those other locations. Now, of course, like any type of open world game, game, Concrete Genie has a good number of collectibles and things to find in it. The collectibles are pages from Ash's sketchbook. While a number of these pages are required for story progression and are pretty straightforward in finding, there are many others that are just used to provide different looks for your genies, like different bodies, tails, horns, and other random things that you can add to your genie. There are also newspapers to find that help give a bit more background about Denska and what happened there, but there aren't that many of these. I think that there were like 4, and they didn't really tell you that much about why Denska became the way it is. There's some information there, but I didn't find it completely satisfactory to explain everything that went on. In addition to these things, there are also a couple of other types of collectibles, for lack of a better term, that use your painting abilities. The first and most prolific of these are genie moment sketches. These are little white pictures you can find on various walls that require you to place certain drawings in order to create a certain scene for the genie. These are very similar to the genie requests that you find around just normally, but are for specific areas and are slightly more complex, although they're still pretty easy and they tell you exactly what you need to draw for it. The second and much more uncommon version of these collectibles are billboards that require you to use your paintings to paint over similar objects as are already on the billboards, kind of like repainting the billboards basically. There aren't that many billboards. I can't remember. There are 5, 6, maybe a couple more than that, but they can be kind of hard to find if you're not really looking. Some of them are kind of in outer way places. Most of them aren't, but there are a couple that are a little harder to find. Now the next section here is going to be slightly spoilish, but I feel like it should be mentioned. The first 2/3 of the game or so, there aren't really any enemies beside the bullies, but even then you're just really avoiding them. You aren't really fighting them or kind of engaging them in any way. This changes later in the game in the lead up to the ending. There are some enemy fights that kind of function almost more like boss battles, and this feels like quite the tonal shift for the game. I kind of get why this happens given the story of the game and where the story goes, but at the same time I think I found the earlier parts more enjoyable than the later. It was still fine, but it just wasn't a direction that I fully enjoyed, and it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if they maybe didn't go that way. So this should give you a good idea of what Concrete Genie is about and like gameplay wise. Now here are my reasons I really recommend the game. I'm going to start with what will probably be the most telling of whether this game is for you or not, and that is that the game is just a very chill, easy experience. This game isn't difficult at all. Even the battles against enemies at the end of the game aren't super hard, but are maybe slightly more difficult than the early parts of the game. And this aspect of the game will probably make or break the game for you. If you're looking for a game that's going to give you a challenge or have a certain level of complexity, this just isn't the game for you. This also isn't for you if you're looking for a game with enemies to battle and slay. While there are those boss battles that I mentioned later on in the game, there aren't many, and even then it's more of a trying to bring them out of the darkness than it is trying to kill them or, defeat them in any kind of traditional way. These realities weren't a problem for me as I enjoy quite a range of games, but I understand that not everyone is like that, and this is not going to be a game for everyone. Personally, I like games that I can just play and relax in, and Concrete Genie was a fun game to do that with. It was fun to explore, paint on the walls, play with your genies. Sure, it was an easy game, but that didn't mean it wasn't a fun game to play and that I didn't enjoy my time with it. I did really enjoy my time in the world of Concrete Genie, and kind of wish that I had more places to explore and paint on when it came time to be done, or more accurately when it came time the tone shifted and went to more of the combat oriented things. I was kind of like, give me more of the I just want to go and paint and colorify the world. Second, I really enjoyed the vibrant colors and the contrast between the dark, dreary world and the bright color that you wound up trying to bring to the world. I've said in many of my recommendations about how I'm kind of a sucker for vibrant colors, and while the world of Concrete Genie isn't quite as vibrant as other games that I've reviewed on the channel, like Fortnite or Bloons, you're trying to kind of make it that way. It's just a game that is really making its art and color the centerpiece of the game, and you can really tell with the way your paintings stand out in the world. It's just that contrast that really draws it out. It just kind of creates this magical, sparkly atmosphere at times that is a lot of fun to experience. Third, I really enjoyed the genies and the personalities they had in game. While you aren't ever told why they're able to come to life other than, hey, it's just magic, you don't really care while watching their antics and silliness in action. Like, they're just a lot of fun to watch how they interact with the various landscape drawings that you can make. And these are particularly noticeable with the genie moments, as they're all designed to make the genies interact in a certain way, like be scared of lightning or funny things like that, and just seeing how they react to those situations. It's just kind of a lot of fun and just kind of a cute little addition to the game that didn't have to be there, but is, and it's a lot of fun to experience. Now lastly, I really like the idea behind the game. The idea of having a game where art and color is fighting off darkness in an abandoned town is a fascinating idea. I feel like it maybe wasn't fleshed out as much as it could have been, and it left me with a good number of questions, but I liked the concept even if they did resort to having some combat near the end of the game. I just found the idea really interesting interesting and unique and hadn't really played a game like it before. Closest game that I can really think of would be Jet Set Radio, but this game felt a lot different in tone than it did. It just was kind of a unique experience for me. So those are all reasons why I really recommend Concrete Genie. It's definitely not a perfect game, as I felt the story didn't really explain some of the aspects of the game very well, and that the story just kind of wrapped up a bit too neatly at the end. I wouldn't necessarily call it a bad story, it just wasn't a very developed story. It was fairly simple and straightforward, which, I mean, for a game that's kind of focused on kind of an E for everyone, kids-friendly game, you don't necessarily need a super complex story, but, you know, for adults that might be trying to play it, just be aware of that. And it's also worth noting that Concrete Genie will definitely not be a game for everyone, if there is even such a game as, you know, one that's for everyone. It's not a very difficult game and may be too easy for gamers looking for a challenge or a certain degree of complexity. But if you can approach Concrete Genie for what it is, I think you'll find a lot to enjoy here with the vibrant colors, fun personalities of the genies, and a unique style of gameplay. It's for all these reasons that I give it one of my gold stars. Have you played Concrete Genie? If you have, what did you think about it? If you haven't, does it look like a game you would be interested in? Feel free to let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe to my channel so that you can be notified when I release new recommendations or other video game content. It is my hope to help people find games they will love and enjoy by sharing games that I have really enjoyed. So we'll see you next time.